Hello, welcome back to our International Economic 1 class. This is our second meeting. I hope you in very good health and ready for today's class. Alright, today materials is the discussion about the international trade theory. This is a classic theory that will be discussed in today's session. uh, the gravity model, and then in our next meeting, perhaps we will discuss some other international trade theory and concepts such as comparative advantage and absolute advantage and Heckscher-Ohlin natural resources in determining the pattern of trade. But today we focus on the gravity model in this session. Okay, before we move on to our discussion, let me briefly uh, share my plan for today's session. Uh, Number one, I will show you the learning outcome of the study, particularly this session, that is a student able to explain how distance between two countries and the size of economy between two countries, both of them play important role in determining the value of trade between these two countries. And then after show you the learning outcome of the today's session, we will go to the main discussion about the uh, gravity model. This is the answer of this question: who trade with whom? For example, uh, why Indonesia trade with China? Why Indonesia trade with nearby countries? What theory that explain such a thing? And then our last contents is about the group discussion or individual discussion that in order to evaluate the expected uh, learning outcome, I have to make student evaluation. It is will discuss the role of information technology in and distribution in gravity model. As previously mentioned, I will show you the learning outcomes of today's session. That there are two learning outcomes that I want to give you to the student. Number one, student could explain the role of uh, economic size in determine the value of international trade between two countries. And the second, not only the size of economy, but also the student could explain the role of distance between two countries also play a significant effect on determine the value of trade between two countries. The gravity model concerns to two variables. Number one, the size of economy, and the second is the distance between two countries. According to the gravity model, these two variables are responsible to the question of who trade with whom. For example, Indonesia trade with China is affected by these two factors because of the China size of economy and the distance between Indonesia and China. So thus, uh, why Indonesia trade with Malaysia, it is also explained by the gravity model. It is because of the economy size between these two countries and distance between these two countries. So the gravity model uh, very concerned about the size of economy between two countries who are doing international transaction and the distance between two countries that play important role beside the size of economy. To more understand the concept of the gravity model, let me show you some of the data from the international trade transaction. Here is the graph that I want to show you. It is the world output or measured by GDP at current US dollar from 1960 to 2018. In 1960, our world economy valued at 1.37 trillion US dollars, and in 2018, our world economy is valued at 85.91 trillion US dollars. And what does these numbers mean? First, of course, our world economy is grows significantly, and then second, as we grow significantly, it means we produce more goods and services compared to 1960. As we have already learned in macroeconomics, when the economy produces goods and services, some of the goods and services are consumed and some of them are being traded or sold in form of export. This graph want to show you the portion of world economy or the world GDP that being traded during 1970 to 2018. In 1970, we consume more than 85% of world output, and only 15% or less than 15% are being traded among countries. However, in 2018, we consume less in 1970 that in 2018 we consume almost 70% of our world output and make 30% of output for traded between countries. What the numbers tell us then? One, it shows that today more goods and services are being traded compared to in 1970. Second, international trade is growing. Now almost every country is engaged in international trade, and it raised the question, of course, with whom the country should make the international trade. In our next slide, I will show you the case of Indonesia trading partners. The graphs show you all Indonesian major partner countries in international trade transaction in 2018. There are 17 countries who are considered as major partners in Indonesia international trade. There are United Arab Emirates, and then Italy, Netherlands, and Germany, Philippines, Korea, India, and of course China. Almost 80 billion US dollar, and the value of international trade between Indonesia and China. And if we sum up all of the 17 major partner value of international trade, it will show the number of 400 billion US dollars. It means from 30% of world output that being traded, 1.43% is came from Indonesia. So why Indonesia doing international trade transaction with these countries. To answer the question in previous slide, I make this scatter plot graph of Indonesian 17 major trade partners. In the vertical axis, it shows the distribution of Indonesian trade partner. As you can see, if you go up, then the country is doing a big international trade transaction with Indonesia. And in the horizontal axis, it shows the share of uh, their GDP relative to the world GDP. As you go further to the right, it means Indonesia doing international trade with world biggest economy. Then what we could analyze from this graph, and then it is, let's see, to these countries, USA, China, and Japan. What could you make of that? Why Indonesia doing international trade transaction with these countries? It's simply because these three countries are the current big players in world economy. We want to sell our goods to the potential buyer, right? So the choice is the choice made by Indonesian economy. Of course, we make transaction with rich and big economies such as USA, Japan, and China, because they are the potential buyers of our goods. The first graph shows that the size of economy determine Indonesia value of trade. The value of international trade is getting bigger when Indonesia trade with the more bigger player in the world economy. Let's see the second uh, scatter plot graph of Indonesian 17 major trade partner. Now we make a group called ASEAN, consists of ASEAN major partners with Indonesia. It is Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines. From these graphs, what can you make of this? It shows that almost 25% of Indonesia international trade are with the nearby countries. As you can see in the vertical axis, that if we going up and up, and then the country is doing a very big international trade transaction with Indonesia. And the ASEAN countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines in one group is doing big international trade transaction in Indonesia. Our Indonesian analysis at least give us two insight. One, Indonesia make international trade transaction with countries who who are considered as big players in world economy, such as Japan, USA, and China. And the second insight, what we get is Indonesia also make a huge international trade transaction with nearby countries, such as ASEAN countries. These two insights is the foundation of so-called the gravity model in international trade theory. As you can see in your screen, there are some letters. T, it denotes the value of transaction between two countries, I and J. For example, if I is Indonesia and J is China, so T it's shows the value of international trade between Indonesia and China. And letter A, the big A, it is a constant. And then letter Y, it shows the GDP of country I and GDP of country J. For example, if I is Indonesia and J is China, so YI is the GDP of Indonesia and YJ is the GDP of China. And the last letter is D. It denotes the distance between two countries. So the equation says that there are two things that determine the value of trade between two countries. There are two countries' GDP and the distance between two countries. For the explanation, you can see that the gravity model tells us that the value of trade between any two countries is proportional to the product of the two countries' GDP and will diminish with the distance between the two countries. So the gravity models also tell us that as our trading partner economy is getting bigger, so our trade with them also increase. It also tells that when our economy is getting bigger, then other countries want to make trade with us. It also will increase our value of trade. And third, as the distance between two countries are more and more further, the value of transaction will be lower. For example, according to the gravity model, our value of transaction between Malaysia and Canada, it should be larger for Malaysia compared to Canada, because it is more further to doing transaction with Canada compared to Malaysia. This is what the gravity model tell us about. Okay, now it is time for group discussion. This the question: if distance does affect international trade, what about technological and communication advance? Does gravity model still relevant in explaining the value of trade between two countries? Discuss this question with your group and submit your result to our Google Classroom. And maximum acceptance of your assignment is on Friday at 24 o'clock. If your submission pass the allowance time, then sorry to say it is considered as not fulfill the assignment. So enjoy your assignment, and thank you, and see you on the next meeting.